Welcome to Class Act Coaching, a podcast for teachers and instructional coaches. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe every one of you deserves a coach. Whether you're inspiring students or guiding teachers, let our school improvement team be your coach this week. Hello, it's me, Ashley. I am here to interrupt your summer breaks. I know we said in our last episode that we're done for the summer and you start getting new episodes in the fall, but we actually have some exciting special episodes and season 2 previews to sprinkle throughout the summer. And to start, we're actually going to do a whole series on a new report that we just did called Guidance for the Use of AI in the K-12 Classroom. All right, this is a completely free report. We're not selling you anything here. It is something created by the K-12 Instruction Subcommittee of the SREB Commission on AI in Education. It talks about 4 pillars of how you can use AI in your classroom. Whether you have been using AI and you feel like you're the expert now, or whether you're like, this new AI thing scares me, I don't know, should I just ban it from my classroom completely? This report walks you through different ways you can use it, different considerations you should take when you're using it, different things you should watch for, because there are some bad things to AI too, as we all know. And so I'm going to be talking over the next few weeks with Leslie Eaves, who is the SREB representative head of the K-12 Instruction Subcommittee of that commission. That's a lot of words, I know. And so she's going to be talking about what this report is, how it's going to practically help teachers in their classrooms, and then each of the episodes after that is going to be talking in depth about each of the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are how to develop cognitively demanding tasks for your students, how to get AI to help you with some administrative work, make it your own personal assistants that we all know you need, how to differentiate between students and use AI to help you target specific students with specific needs in a way that you as one person doing all the work in the classroom can't always do. And then finally, the last pillar is to start thinking about how you can help your students become ethical AI users of the future. Those are the 4 pillars, and we're going to talk about each one of those in depth, but we're going to start with this episode where Leslie's going to walk us through what the report is and some starting points for you and how to get into it and how to start using AI in your classroom. And we're not starting a video version of this podcast, at least not quite yet, but we are going to have video versions of each of these AI episodes. So if you feel like watching instead of listening, you can see Leslie and I talking. And also we might have some visuals thrown into the video version that aren't in the podcast for obvious reasons. We hope you listen and we hope you learn a lot and we hope you really become fans of AI and be able to find ways to make your life easier by using it in your classroom. So let's get started. Well, hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Hi, Ashley.
So you are coming here to do the first episode of a 5-episode series. So I am excited to hear everything you're going to tell me over the next several weeks.
Yeah.
First of all, I know you came and you did an episode with me before, but would you reintroduce yourself since it's been a while since you've been here and done an episode?
Yes, I am the program director for project-based learning here at SREB. I work with schools and districts on providing professional learning and coaching for teachers to embrace project-based learning as a pedagogy in their classrooms. I also write the professional learning and I support our coaches in the field to facilitate the professional learning and work through any dilemmas they have. So I coach them as they also coach teachers on project-based learning.
All right. And one thing you did not mention, but which is part of why you're here with me today, is you, and I am also, are a member of the SREB Commission on AI in Education. And can you tell me a little bit about that commission and your role on it?
Yeah, so the commission was formed by the president of our company, Steve Pruitt, And he saw that, AI is starting to emerge as an emerging technology, and it was starting to get into schools or school. You see this like almost like a dichotomy. Schools were either like, yes, jumping on the bandwagon and starting to use it, or schools were putting up pretty hard roadblocks, like, no, absolutely no way. So he did feel that there was a need for having some greater discussions on what AI could be. And really, I would say the K-16, the K-12 and post-secondary worlds. So it's a commission made up by SREB staff, educators, state leaders, policymakers, and business leaders in the 16 southern states that SREB supports. And our goal is to sort of look at and provide guidance for schools, states, district, post-secondary institutions on how to use AI thoughtfully in their environments. We have 4 main subcommittees. You have the policy committee, which looks at both K-12 and post-secondary policy. You have the post-secondary instruction committee, the workforce committee, and the one that I'm on that produced this report, the K-12 instruction subcommittee.
All right. So I'm glad you mentioned the report. We're going to be talking about that in depth over the next few weeks. I am on the policy subcommittee. I don't have as much obviously I know a little bit about the K-12 subcommittee, but I don't attend your meetings. I don't do all that. Each of the subcommittees meets together and comes up with their own output of things that are going to be useful for that group. So the post-secondary one is working on a landscape document of what's going on in post-secondary. Policy, the one that I am on, comes up with recommendations that state might want to implement into law. And in K-12 instruction, the first thing that you guys did was create this report. And that is what we're going to talk about. We're going to introduce it today. And then it's based around 4 pillars, and we're going to talk about each of the pillars in depth in the next 4 episodes. Can you tell me a little bit about this report?
Sure. So one of the things that early on, as we were exploring as a K-12 subcommittee, I would say the first thing that we explored were what's going on in the K-12 sphere, and then if schools and districts were going to adopt AI thoughtfully, ethically, efficiently, what were the adult skills that needed to make that happen, right? So we started there. And through that conversation, we realized that we really needed to paint a picture, a vision of what it could be in K-12 education. So there's a lot, I feel like right now AI in K-12, or maybe AI in general in education, is a Wild West. There's a lot being thrown at schools and districts all at once. And there's a lot of fear, and there may be even a lot of, jumping on board without sort of jumping into the deep end. And we wanted to just sort of paint a picture of what it could be used for to support teaching and learning, but what might be some cautions that we need to take along the way. So as we did some exploration, we interviewed teachers and other educators. We examined different reports that are out there, different frameworks that have been out there. And through that, we sort of identified these 4 pillars of use of AI in the K-12 classroom. And then for each one, we also looked at the opportunities, like the excitements of what this could mean and what this might look like. But then let's provide some cautions, because there are some real cautions that we need to take into place as we consider how to use AI thoughtfully, meaningfully, effectively into the K-12 classroom.
All right. Well, thank you. And so this is all built around 4 pillars. To the 4 pillars, like I've already mentioned, we will go into depth on. But in this introductory episode, can you just tell us a little bit about what the 4 pillars are and how you came to pick those 4 pillars?
Sure. I feel like I should say, because in my head, depending on the day, any given pillar may feel more important than the other. But we really thought of these, I always think of these as like pillars of a house or a foundation. No one is more important than the other, even though they're in an order in the document. But depending on where you are, they are ranked. They are of equal importance. So I always feel like I need to say that before I go in. Now, pillar one is using AI-infused tools to develop more cognitively demanding tasks that increase student engagement with creative problem solving and innovative thinking. It's a mouthful, but these, in a sense, what we're trying to do, what we're encouraging schools to do is to consider what tasks, what larger, intellectually demanding, deep tasks can students do that really put them into the creativity and problem solving and the innovation mindset, where either AI can't easily be used or AI is used as part of a process, but we don't want students to use AI to get out of learning, right? To not engage into the learning process. So pillar one is about writing classroom task assignments where creativity and innovative thinking is at the forefront and AI becomes a tool within that process.
But I want to say, based off something you just said, that's something that I hear all the time in the AI Commission meeting that I think is really important for us to point out right now, is that when we talk about AI, we do promote that AI is a tool. It's a tool you can use just like a hammer at building a house. A hammer is not going to build a house on its own. And I wouldn't want to live in a house where a hammer just did all the work itself. But it is one tool that you can use when you're building the house. So AI is a tool used by a human. And that's how we want to promote it. It's not a thing that takes over and rules the world and comes out and gets us.
And I would inherit in this process, sort of my heart is that the teacher and the students and the learning is still at the center of the process. It is not meant to replace what a teacher does in the classroom. And a skilled teacher does so much more than provide knowledge instruction. Knowledge instruction is one small component of a classroom experience. The teacher's there to help facilitate students through deep instructional tasks. They are there to support the student thinking, to see how the students might be engaging in a task and help to, hey, you're struggling here. Here's another place here's something that might help you to get them over the hump. And we use a variety of tools in the classroom to support that, right? So you have pedagogical tools like scaffolding, differentiation, graphic organizers, discussion, collaboration, but you also have tech tools in the past that have also been used. So internet searching, Google Classroom, Canva, just to name a few, they've also always been there to help support the learning or to help make learning meaningful to students. So AI should be just one of those, but we want to make sure that it's couched in a larger learning process that really engages kids into exciting, fun, meaningful learning experiences.
Well, thank you for that. And so I interrupted you as you were telling what the 4 pillars were, because I wanted to point that out since you mentioned the tool part. So how about now will you tell us what the other pillars are?
Pillar 2 is using AI to streamline teacher administrative and planning work. So beyond creating you can use AI to create these higher tasks, these project-based learning or unit-oriented or cognitively demanding tasks, however you want to call it. It can also be a powerful tool for teachers to create engaging resources, to be a thought partner as they plan lessons, to help with grading, help with feedback, help formulate letters to parents, letters to students, create a class newsletter. It allows for a breadth of skills and tools for a teacher to more quickly do some of that background work that makes the classroom come alive. And so the pillar 2 is about teachers using it as part of their work. Pillar 3 is using AI to support personalized learning. So, sometimes kids need that extra help, and there's one teacher in a classroom for 20, 30, sometimes 40 kids. You can't always get around to everybody. So you might be able to have an AI tool that will support kids in their learning in between times when they can get one-on-one with the teacher. It can also be used at home to continue the learning at home. It can be used to align, to help better, so maybe that's something the teacher's saying or doing isn't making sense. The student might be able to use AI to say, hey, explain this to me. That connects it to something that they like basketball or theater, right? It might be able to help create analogies, but it can also provide instantaneous feedback. It can help support emotional and social learning. It might even have some adaptive platforms that help in the moment in the learning process. So there's a lot of ways that we can use AI thoughtfully to personalize learning to students. And then pillar 4 is developing students as ethical and proficient AI users. So we do know that they are going to have to use AI when they graduate or when they move on to the next phase of their education and career life. It's becoming increasingly as part of our toolbox in a variety of jobs. And some jobs, it's going to be more than other jobs. So how do we help students know how to use it, know its limitations, know where it's best to use it, where it's limiting, and even being able to know when something's AI generated, when it's not AI generated, being able to curate, disseminate information so that critical media literacy, beyond just normal media literacy, now we have to add AI as a component to that.
All right. And so one thing I want to take a moment right here and point out, because we're talking so much about this report, and I want to make it clear, the report we're talking about is a free report. You don't even have to put your contact information in and to get on our marketing list. It is something that will be in the show notes. You can download it. You can use it in your classroom immediately. So as we're talking about this podcast, the series of podcast episodes that we're doing are meant to be a tool to use with the handout itself. So you can follow along, or you can, if you're driving or something and listening to this, you can use it later. So everything we're talking about, though, is we're trying to show you how this tool is useful for you and not trying to sell you on anything. I just want to make that clear. So please look at the report that goes with this. But speaking of that, maybe this is a good time for you to talk about the audience for this. Who is this report meant for?
A lot of people. So we did try to be broad in the audience. We wanted to provide something for policymakers. So this could be lawmakers, it could be state policymakers, district policymakers, school policymakers, to be able to thoughtfully consider how, what policies are supporting AI use, what policies are limiting AI use, and providing knowledge to write informed policy around AI use in the K-12 classroom. We also wanted schools and districts and states to have a vision for what it could look like and the benefits of it, along with the cautions. I think with any new tool, or any new advancement comes along, there are wonderful benefits, but there are also drawbacks that we need to thoughtfully consider as we start to bring it into our practice. And I also wanted teachers to be able to have something where they can see how it can be useful for them in their teaching practice and how it can support them in their teaching practice.
All right. So for this, since this podcast is geared towards K-12, and obviously you're in the K-12 instruction. Let's talk a little bit to teachers really quickly. I know other listeners out there aren't teachers, but I think they can also benefit from what I'm about to ask. But let's say somebody's out there listening and they're a busy K-12 instructor and they're like, I don't have time to learn anything else. What is your advice for them on why this could actually be useful for them and they can use it in a practical way that's going to make their life easier, not harder?
Well, I will say most of the teachers that I have talked with and I work with are really starting with and embracing practice or pillar 2, using AI to support any other like administrative work in their classroom. So it really can, and I've used it when we plan curriculum and even when I'm thinking about professional development. AI is a thought partner and a lesson planner. It really does have some powerful tools there. I've even put in, I need a lesson idea for introducing kids to different types of bridges from a constructivist viewpoint or using a 5E lesson plan model. So it gave me something. It wasn't perfect, but I had some so in 5 minutes, I could be like, oh, I was stuck. And I could be like, oh, yes, no, that's a great idea. So let me do it this way. So it really can be just or I guess let me stop and say this. Sometimes teaching can be a very isolating discipline or career. It's you and your classroom and your ideas, and you don't always have time or the space to thought partner with another teacher. And if you're like me, I was teaching in technology education and as a career tech ed instructor or teacher, and you may be the only one of you in a school. Like there might not be, if I'm an automotive person, there may not be another automotive teacher. I'm it. There may not be another cosmetology teacher. I'm it. So it allows for you to get ideas really quickly and get unstuck. It also can make I've heard teachers use things like helping them with grouping, student grouping, putting in not student names, but numbers and maybe some attributes for each number and say, hey, can you organize the students by strengths? Can you organize the students by need, learning need? And it can produce something for you quickly instead of you having to, or at least what I used to do is have to move blocks around or resort things on a spreadsheet. And it can make translating stuff super easy, right? It's not always perfect. So I always do recommend running it by somebody who might know the language at your school. But it's a very powerful tool to be able to just, from your perspective, almost as like a personal assistant to get things done quicker that would normally take up a lot of time.
So I had another question, but you kind of answered it with that. And I just want to pull out a little bit of what you just said, which is I was going to ask, okay, a teacher that wants to use this report, where would be a good place for them to start, especially if they don't really know anything about AI yet? But it sounds like even though they're all equally important, that a good place for someone who is maybe just starting the AI journey and doesn't really know what they're doing, maybe start with pillar 2, make life a little easier for yourself, get some of those tasks done, and then use some of that time that you saved with pillar 2 to kind of then go into the other pillars and start expanding on how you can not only save yourself some time, but make things easier and better for your students.
Yeah. Yes. And when you were saying that, I was just thinking about it's the how might journey. So first of all, a lot of schools and districts, student access to AI is still pretty tightly blocked or tightly controlled. So students may or may not yet have access to AI tools. So a great place to start is from the teacher perspective, from the adult perspective, because that is where a lot of schools and districts are starting. And it allows you to get in and see what it can do and what it can't do. And it puts you in the mindset of how might. okay, well, it's helped me do this. How might I apply this into my classroom? I'm figuring out that it's doing this. How might I translate that for students? How might I help develop students into that? So in order to get into that how might space of teaching and planning, we first have to be users. We have to get in and get messy. I always used to tell my kids, like, we've got to just dive in and get messy. And I tell that with the teachers that I work with. We can sit here and we can hem and haw, and we can try and let it be perfect. But at the end of the day, if you want to do PBL, you got to get in and get messy and allow yourself to not be perfect at something and to iterate in your practice. And I think AI is the same way. And it's much easier to do that when it's you in your own planning time and supporting your own practice versus when you're in front of students. So, yes.
All right. That's great. And so, as I've already mentioned a couple of times, the next 4 weeks, we are going to go into each of these pillars, and we're going to talk about what the pillar is, how a teacher can use it, what the benefits are, what they need to know, all those details. But this is just an introduction. So I think it's a good time to kind of wrap up. But before we do that, I do want to end on something practical. So can you kind of give me just a couple of the things that teachers should consider and the things that teachers should be excited about? So when it comes to using AI in the classroom, so like basically 2 benefits of AI that they should have, and like maybe 2 risks that they could start to think about. Sure.
I really am excited by what AI can do to help teachers plan engaging learning experiences for students, whether that be on a lesson by lesson basis or supporting project-based learning units. Planning has always been the Achilles heel to a PBL practice. It does take a lot of time to plan and consider how to design a problem and challenge that also will naturally engage in learning of content. And AI can come up with some really great starting points for PBLs, including chunking it and, bringing in the learning process. So it just creates that planning time so much easier. And then, just some of the things that I'm hearing teachers be able to do in terms of resource creation that, where, if you're not a graphic designer, you don't have to be. You can get in and say, hey, give me a Harry Potter role play for learning how to, divide fractions. I'm making that up, but, you can do a lot of really cool stuff easier that can really be exciting for students. And I think that is what excites me here. The caution that I hear most often as we dive into this, because there are now a lot of tools that are out there, and not every tool is created equal, and not every tool who says that it's AI is really AI. And I think we still have to be very cautious about the information that an AI system is giving us. So what I hear a lot is these AI checks on things like Grammarly or other things where you might be able to run a piece of students' writing through and it can check it to see if it's AI. Those are not very accurate right now. And I don't want any student to be accused of cheating or accused of using AI when either they may have used it as a starting point, but it still is indicative of their thoughts and feelings, like they put in a bulleted list and then it gave them sentences. But the student still did the research and the thinking part to it, or in some cases, it's just wrong. It's giving a false narrative. I've had things that I know that I crafted the sentences and I put it through a Grammarly check and it came back as highlighting it as AI. And that just might be because my first foray in writing is as a technical writer, as an engineer. So I write like an engineer. I maybe write like an AI system. So we just have to be very cautious about the information that AI is giving us, because sometimes, it does these, what we call hallucinations. So it's things like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini. are running off of these large language models, and they can make things that sound like it's correct, but they don't have the resources. So if you aren't paying for it or using free stuff and you haven't fed it, use these sources to give me this information, or to summarize this information. The information coming out of the AI bot may be from sources that aren't valid for what you're trying to use it for, or don't represent a more wider or complex knowledge base that might be more valid.
An example of a hallucination to maybe demonstrate what it does. Not teaching based, but it is connected to this podcast, so I feel like it's still relevant.
Yeah.
And that one time when I was preparing for one of our wrap-up episodes that we do at the end of the semester, I gave it some documents, like, these are the transcripts from our episodes. Can you kind of sum up what the main themes you saw in it and give me examples of what episode talked about what, so as I'm preparing? And I didn't realize that it was too big a file for it to read. But instead of it saying, hey, I can't read this whole file, it just made stuff up. And luckily, because I do all the episodes, I knew that the episode it talked about with Susie Smith on X, Y, and Z topic. Well, there is no Susie Smith, and that topic never happened. And I was fascinated. So I started asking it questions about this imaginary episode that it was quoting from. And it would never admit that episode did not exist. It just kept, oh, thank you for asking that. This is what Susie Smith talked about in her episode. And I'd be like, oh, can you give me like an outline of what her episode was about? It gave me a full outline of this imaginary episode that never had happened. And it just kept going, and never once. I just had a full conversation with it as if I thought it was a real episode. It never once hinted that, oh, no, this episode never happened. I'm just giving you an idea of what could have happened. It was just talking to me like it knew all about this real episode. Right. And so luckily for me, I knew that was a fake episode. But if it was a student putting in a bunch of information for a report it had to do, and it had the source, and it could start quoting the source thinking it's a real source, that could be a problem.
Right. Yeah, or sometimes it will give you a resource. So I was using it to try and find and summarize. I was trying to make a connection for how or track what are the collaboration skills that start in kindergarten to support students' collaboration growth through middle school. I was working with a K-8 school, and I wanted to provide the teachers, we're working on collaboration, and I wanted to provide the teachers, the K2 teachers, a starting point, and the 3-5 teachers, right, another starting point, and then the 6-8 teachers, something. So how do we support student collaboration across this wide range of skills? There's a lot of articles and research to support upper elementary and middle school, but there's not a lot to support K2. And what does collaboration or cooperation look like in K2? And when I was using AI to do that, and I'm just using a free version, I think it was Microsoft Copilot, it gave me some things that sounded correct because it's what I probably would say. But when I asked for the references were more blogs or articles. They weren't journal articles that it was referencing. And so I couldn't really use the information, and it wasn't helpful in order to get me to answer that question about collaboration in K2. I think the answer is there's not a lot of research there. More needs to be done, but I had to basically go off of AI and just continue to do some more Google searching to get deeper and deeper into a resource that I could use for my K2 teachers to think about how do they support collaboration in early grades that carry kids to the next phase of their career. So yeah, and it was one of those, was like, oh, wanted this to be easy. But it was not. I mean, at least it did show me, because it would kept referencing like 3 articles. And when I went and read those articles, I'm like, that's not what these articles say. So it was a learning experience that just because it's coming out, just because it sounds professional, just because it sounds right, doesn't mean it's taking into account a breadth of knowledge. And, I still think that's why it is so super important to still engage kids in the learning process because they have got to become little content experts. So they will we're almost having to train kids' brains to be able to say, does that make sense? Is what the computer's giving me make sense? And so there's a lot that may need to happen offline in order for students to be able to thoughtfully work in an online world, whether it be still through Google searching and online searching or looking at, online articles and media to using AI as a part of that process. And it's going to be super important what we do offline to support kids' work online.
All right. Well, we went over one excitement and one caution instead of two, but they were really good ones. So I think that we can end on those. We do want to kind of wrap this episode up. And then next week, we're going to be back and you're going to talk about Pillar 1, which is the cognitively demanding. So I look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Class Act Coaching, brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.